So another string to a bow, your broadcasting.
Yeah.
What would be your highlights of your broadcasting work, and how much do you enjoy it?
I do enjoy it. I'm not a natural by any means, but I've been fortunate to work with some brilliant people on racing TV and at the races before it, with Sir Bob Cooper and one or two people like that. But certainly the current raft of racing TV people, without blowing too much smoke up their proverbial, Nick Luck, Lydia Hislop, Stuart Machin, some great people to work with. Very, very fortunate to still have a role on there and enjoy the days that I do.
Okay, so also you've been, I should say, you've told me now it's in the past tense, a jockey's agent. You work for Megan Nicholls.
Yes.
Now, for those of us that don't know, which is me included, really, what does I assume you get the rides, but describe a day in the jockey's agent's life?
A lot of work for not much money, basically, and you are very much committed to the job, because obviously somebody else is relying on you for their livelihood, and I've had plenty of that sort of, your conscience is poked and prodded, tipping horses, and if they lose, then I would rather tip a 10-1 winner than back a 10-1 winner on a big Saturday in the Mail, no brainer. I would get more joy out of tipping a 10-1 winner than actually backing it, and obviously looking after Meg last year, I sort of did it as a favour to her cousin Harry Derham and to her, because she hadn't had an agent before. She'd done it all herself. Was a really, really interesting year, 12 or 14 months, and for someone who is probably as pessimistic and negative as me, I found myself having to work as sort of, not a psychiatrist, like a sports psychiatrist, but just somebody who, tried to look more positively. If things went wrong in a race, try and find the things that went right, and then put right the things that went wrong, essentially, in the way that she rode or whatever. But I mean, I can honestly say I thought she probably rode 3 or 4 average races last year. I mean, she was in terrific form, and she did a lot of the work herself, so it was a pretty easy role, but you're still having to sell as such, Meg's abilities to various trainers. You're ringing round trying to get her onto horses, and when the odd day where you couldn't get her a ride, you felt very guilty that it was somebody's livelihood that was suffering because of it.
And what's without going into figures exactly, but what sort of numeration is there? Do they employ you as a fixed figure, or do you get a percentage?
Yeah,
of the
you get 10%
money?
basically. You get 10% of the riding fee, 10% of the winnings. I mean, I had to pick a year where she barely had a ride for her dad, which wasn't great. But I was on a lower percentage when she was riding horses for Paul, because obviously I didn't have to do any work for it, which was very understandable, and it was very enjoyable. I mean, it was almost like it was your niece or your daughter was doing well at school, and every time she rode a big winner, you get so much pleasure from it. It was a really enjoyable experience in the main. 5 or 10% of it, which were I wouldn't mind if that never happened again. Dealing with 1 or 2 people that I won't name names, but they weren't easy. But most of the people were very sort of receptive to her riding their horses. She had a good bit of success. Her strike rate was terrific. She was getting on the right horses in the main. She rode a couple of world-class races for me. Goodwood winner, a Glorious Goodwood winner as well, which was great. She got a real buzz out of that. So, sharing in that success was terrific.
Okay, so that has come to an end.
Yes.
Has your jockey agent career come to an end with it, or should Dave Roberts be looking over his shoulder?
I think unless James Doyle and Will Buick came knocking, yes, probably, because it is very restrictive. You're spending a good amount of hours tied to the computer. I mean, that's a beautiful thing with working for the Mail and the tipping, is that you've got the 48-hour declarations on the flat. So in the high summer, you could probably work till 11 o'clock one night and just say, right, I'm going to do all the cards for the day after. The forecast is pretty stable. I've got my speed ratings. I've got all the declarations. I can work away and do those and give myself a bit of an easier day tomorrow. I can go to the gym, or I can walk the dog, I could, whatever I want to do in the morning. But when you're an agent, you can't do that. It all revolves around declaration time. Then once 10 o'clock goes, you've got 10:30 filling up in any spares, and then you might then have to start working towards the weekend. And how these guys do it, who have 8 to 10, I mean, Dave Roberts or Richard Hale, it's just beyond me how they manage to cope with it all, and it does very much restrict your life. And I'm at the age now, having just gone 50, where I'd like to enjoy a little bit of life rather than have it all completely revolving around racing. So I think Meg's going to go on to another successful agent. Well, I say a successful agent, somebody who's full-time at it and can give her the sort of care and attention that she deserves, really.
Okay, now, earlier you mentioned Jon Babb, who's another Midland Shroudie.
Another Midlands Maestro, yes.
Yeah, so how have you, how's that sort of come about? And what is it you're doing with him?
Well, I've known Jon for a good few years, really. Obviously, we have a shared love for Wolverhampton Wanderers, and it sort of stemmed about when I was doing a little bit of work when I was freelance, just after leaving the Shropshire Star for Heather Dalton, sort of placing horses and making entries and all that sort of stuff. And Jon became attached to the yard as well, and we had a really average little mare between a group of us called Andalia and it was out of those sort of seeds that Shropshire Wolves was sort of grown, really. Horses with Mark Brisbane and various other trainers with a good bit of success, and Jon's a tremendous operator, really. Obviously, successful punter, brilliant syndicate manager, clever buyer and seller of horses, brilliant placer of horses, works with a number of trainers now. You've got to get up very early to get one over on Jon. He's a very, very shrewd cookie. So I was lucky that I was sort of in Shropshire Wolves at an early stage. I mean, they've had I don't know how many winners it is, but there's dozens, and still having them now. I mean, Snow Ocean won the other day. They still keep regurgitating, and I might have sort of glossed over a few of the failures, but there doesn't seem to have been that many. I mean, he picked up Steel Cut for, I don't know, 6,000 or 8,000 out of a claimer, and he won 5 in a year. And just a lot of local trainers, Tony Carroll, as I say, Mark Brisbane and various other guys as well have all done terrifically well out of Shropshire Wolves, really.
So you were telling me you're going to be doing a podcast with Jon, so once again you're going to be giving away your edge and your secrets to the betting public.
John is, because Jon will be the one that people want to listen to.
Self-depreciation again.
No, it's more a case of, if you can sort of speak to these people. For me, it's doing a podcast, but for me it'll also be great to listen to how Jon approaches various things. I mean, you've podcasts in the past. I mean, the only Horses and Fools one, or whatever it was called, with Ollie Bell and Tom Stanley and Nick Goff, was a tremendous listen, because, and no disrespect to the two horse racing lads who I work with on Racing TV, but listen to Goffy talk about betting and the way that he approaches sports betting. It even made me interested in American football again from 30 years ago when I used to watch it on Channel 4, So, and listening to Jon's appreciation of how to weigh up a football market and various other markets as well, not least horse racing. Hopefully it'll make it a good listen. We'll be chuntering on with two old blokes. It'd be like we're sitting in a pub having a pint of HBA and rattling along and being miserable, but hopefully it'll be a good listen. Some of it might be useful.
Okay, we look forward to that. And finally, everybody likes to learn a bit from these. They've probably learned a fair bit already, but what would your one bit of advice for any punter from you to
them? In what respects? To betting, win or betting, to try and pick more winners?
Anything, picking more winners, betting, anything you think is the most important thing to remember when you're trying to be successful.
Well, I won't be glib enough to say subscribe to the speed figures, but I will say bank management for me is the crucial point. Separate your day-to-day expenditure from your betting money, and you will then find, I think, if you take the money out of your current account and you open up 3, 4, 5 accounts if you can, and keep the money in them, the accounts might stay open for longer, because you're not taking money in and out, and people just don't, bookmakers then don't feel as though you're just looking for a quick hit and you're just going to withdraw your money. So if you leave the money in there, if you can afford to do that, build that up slowly. It doesn't matter how quickly you do it. Don't bet at the thin end of the market. I just don't see any future in that long term. Try and bet 5 to 1 and bigger, 4 to 1 and bigger, whatever, and do it that way. And I try and back horses that have performed well within the last 3 to 10 days. At least they're fit well. Yes, you're going to get the odd one that might have run well and then bounces off the back of that performance, but generally you're getting horses, and this will be the Steve Goff mantra, you're getting horses, even if they're running the day after, that are on the cusp of, you know, on a wave at the moment. Whereas if you're backing horses that have been off a month, you don't know what the trainer's done with them for a month. You don't know what problems they've had. You know, anything could have happened to them in a month or 6 weeks. So I like good recent form, and play that way and play accordingly. But don't bet thin, because, you know, it's just, I just think it's the route to poverty, really. And as I said earlier on, don't strike a bet at 9 o'clock that you wouldn't have envisaged having at 12 o'clock, because that's only going to lead one way. Occasionally you'll get out, but most of the time, you know, the inevitable happens, and you've then got to go to sleep on the back of that. And where do you come back the next day? Where do you start? You know, if you've done all your banking the day before, you've got that mental scar. It's just not worth it. The torment isn't worth it.
Brilliant. On that advice, Sam Turner, thank you very much.
Cheers, Simon.